Rain lashed against the windows. Thunder roared. Claire pulled her coat tighter around her. She finally reached the steps of the old Grand Blackwood Hotel. It looked spooky even without the raging storm. Claire hurried inside, shivering with cold and fear. The lobby was dark and mostly empty. A fire crackled weakly in a large fireplace. Behind the old-fashioned counter stood the hotel clerk. He looked up as Claire approached. "Just one for the night," Claire said, her voice trembling. The clerk didn't answer right away. His eyes were narrowed, studying her. He seemed nervous. Finally, he grabbed an old brass key. "Room 302, he muttered, pushing it across the counter. "And whatever you do, stay away from room 404. Claire frowned. That was an odd thing to say. Claire dragged her suitcase down the hallway. The musty air felt heavy. It was like the hotel itself was watching her. She found her room and unlocked the door. Inside it was small and dusty, but at least the bed looked comfortable. Claire tried to relax, but the storm and the clerk's strange warning made her jumpy. Then she heard it, a faint scratching sound. It seemed to be coming from the room next door, room 404. Curiosity gnawed at Claire. The clerk had said to stay away. But why? What was so terrible about that room? She couldn't resist any longer. Claire crept towards room 404. Claire put her ear to the door. The scratching was louder now, mixed with other strange noises. Whispers, a muffled scream. It sounded like a struggle. Her heart pounding, Claire tried the doorknob. To her surprise, it turned. The door creaked open slowly. Claire held her breath and peeked inside. At first glance, the room looked ordinary. There was a bed, a dresser, a couple of chairs. But something wasn't right. The air felt thick and cold. And the noises were louder now. The scratching, the whispers, the screams. Then Claire realized what was so strange. The room seemed frozen in time. There were 4 figures inside, but they weren't moving. They looked ghostly and translucent, like figures in an old photograph. There was a man and a woman dressed in elegant clothing from another era. They seemed to be arguing. Standing over them was another man, this one holding a gleaming knife. Blood stained his hands, and the woman's white dress. A wave of cold fear washed over Claire. She was witnessing a scene from the past, a violent murder frozen in time. She tried to step back to get away, but her feet felt glued to the spot. Suddenly, the ghostly figures turned towards Claire, their eyes, filled with terror and anger, locked onto hers. Claire wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The man with the bloody knife smiled grimly. He reached out with a cold, ghostly hand, beckoning Claire toward them. "No!" Claire gasped, finally finding her voice, but it was too late. She could feel herself being pulled forward, drawn into the scene. The room seemed to spin. Claire stumbled and fell, landing right at the feet of the ghostly figures. They were no longer transparent. They were solid, real, and they were closing in on her. The last thing Claire saw before everything went black was the horrified expression on the murdered woman's face. It was an expression she knew would soon be her own. The next morning, the new hotel clerk glanced at the board. He noticed a room marked occupied. It was room 404. He frowned. No one had stayed there for years. Not since, well, he couldn't remember. He knocked on the door. No answer. He used the master key to open it. His eyes widened in horror. Inside, the room looked exactly like it always did, frozen in time, with the ghostly figures of the murder victims and their killer. But now there was another figure, a young woman with terrified eyes and a look of horrified understanding on her face. She was trapped in the loop, doomed to relive the terrifying murder, forever a prisoner of room 404.